hereby call to order the meeting of the SFRPC. Yes.
I just wanted to say a quick housekeeping tip. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself. If you would like to speak, you can put it in the chat or put on your camera and raise your hand to be recognized. Thank you.
All right.
Please make sure everyone's cell phone is off or on vibrate. Laptops as well, please. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're the boss.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I know.
Give me one today.
I was up here for the weekend. I'm like, I have my dog.
I am sufficiently disorganized that we can't find the document that she handed to me earlier. Here it is. Okay. There's enough papers floating around. Okay. I have now called this meeting to order, the meeting of the SFRPC. And let me ask, is Beth Brownstein here? Yeah.
Hi, Senator.
Gotcha.
Yep, I'm
Sorry.
here.
Okay. All right. You don't have your
Hi.
camera on it. Hi, Beth. How are you?
There we go.
All right, thanks. All right. Let me begin with a few housekeeping things. Again, as part of what I'm trying to do to make SFRPC more relevant, instead of our being here and being spoken to by people on things that we generally already all know, what we're trying to do is have alternating. Every other meeting will be one where we're going to try and do most of our business. And then in every other meeting, alternating, we're trying to have something that will be a substantial meeting on a substantial topic where there will be time for Q&A on issues that are directly affecting our constituents. All of us are either, except for the ex officio, all of us are either elected officials or gubernatorial appointees. This means all of us have constituents with issues that we need to deal with. The first topic that we're going to have is today on the homeowner insurance crisis. Many of you have seen this issue where the cost, yes? Roll call.
That was next.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just making introductory remarks right now. So this is what we're going to hear at today's meeting. I would like to announce that Hillary Cassell, who was scheduled to be here, called me last night in tears. Her grandfather has gone into hospice. They are expecting that, either yesterday, today, or tomorrow, that he will no longer be with us. And obviously, the whole family is spending her time with her, and our thoughts are going out to her. And so we will be, I think I only have 4 or 5 meetings left as chair, but we will be looking for additional topics. I am asking everybody if there are other substantive topics that you think we can discuss in an hour or so, where we can have, including 30, 40 minutes of speaker and discussion amongst ourselves, that I ask you to bring those topics to Isabel. I don't think you can let me know because of sunshine. So please send them directly to Isabel. Are there any questions on that? If not, let me now ask, please call the roll. Good. Okay, pledge of allegiance first. I really need to read my agenda better. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Or we can remain, no, we'll make you stand up. I'm going to ask before we start. No, now I'm going to do a moment of silence, then I'm going to do a roll call.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay. I will ask for a moment of silence for 2 people. Ryan Michael McMahon is the brother of SFRPC staff member, local emergency planning committee staff, Jason McMahon. He passed away at the age of 26, and we extend our condolences to Jason and his family. Also, Michael Finney, the president and CEO of the Beacon Council, was 65, and Mr. Finney was a dedicated and energetic champion of economic prosperity during his 5-year tenure. I hope that's not my card. As CEO of Miami-Dade County's Beacon Council. Let me ask for a moment of silence for both Mr. McMahon and Mr. Finney. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Haley?
Present.
That's my card.
Pates?
Here.
Goldire? Here. Corradino?
Here.
Burr?
Here.
Garcia? He's not, I know he was trying to get back on, but he hasn't jumped back on yet. Gilbert?
What is that?
Goldberg?
Here.
Hoffman?
Here.
McGee? Ross? Udine? Ziotti?
Here.
Andriotta?
Here.
Wynn?
Here.
Mayers? Geller?
Here.
The record, Mr. Chair, under section 120.525, which is the statute that governs your quorum requirements, you have a quorum legally under the statute to proceed both online virtually and in present physically. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Gorham. Before we begin our presentation today, George Leonard is not here. But- Okay, I'm going to postpone this item until our next meeting then. We're going to thank him for his service, but former council member, former SFRPC member Leonard, but we'll have.
Yes, in fact, he was appointed, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, he was appointed by the Miami-Dade League of Cities. So we will be needing Councilmember Corradino, president of the League of Cities, another Miami-Dade representative, because Councilmember Leonard is no longer on Bay Harbor Island since he resigned to run for state.
We'll do that this week.
Thank you.
And let me ask for a motion to approve our council.
Chair Bailey does.
Yes, Chair Bailey, you recognize, sir, former Chair Bailey.
Mr. Chair, I think I heard it correctly. I just want to verify. The deceased is a former member of council staff, correct?
No, he's the brother of a former member of council staff.
Okay,
He's the brother of a current member of council staff.
thank you.
Okay. And is there a motion to approve the council agenda? Moved by Commissioner Burr, seconded by Mayor Ziotti. Discussion, seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, show it adopted unanimously. And as I said, this is our new format. We will see whether my successor chooses to carry this format on, but, that's up to, who is my successor?
Kaufman.
That's up to Mayor Kaufman as to whether or not he chooses to use the same format or not. Again, our next topic, which we have scheduled for between 45 minutes and an hour, including Q&A, is on the crisis in homeowner insurance, which includes, but it's not limited to, availability and affordability. This is something I kind of am an expert on also, having been on the insurance committees for 18 of the 20 years I was in the legislature, including being chair of the Property Casualty Insurance Subcommittee, vice chair and national president of the National Conference of Insurance Legislators. So since Ms. Cassell is not here, I came up with 3 pages of questions I can ask Beth that I worked on late last night in case we need to, since you'll be doing basically both presentations.
We have a
Let me
package.
briefly introduce Beth Brownstein. She is currently serving as Director of Communications and Stakeholder Relations at the Federal Association for Insurance Reform, which changed its name fairly recently. FAIR used to be called the Florida Association for Insurance Reform. It is a nonprofit, nonpartisan association with the mission to engage consumers and ensure they have access to quality and affordable insurance through balanced public policy. FAIR is very interesting. It's the only group that I know of that has worked closely with the insurance industry, the trial bar, and the public adjusters, which are groups that frequently, at least the trial bar and the insurance industry are frequently at loggerheads, but both are active and FAIR. So, Ms. Brownstein, thank you for being here today. Virtually, you're recognized, ma'am, to begin a presentation.
Thank you, Chair Geller. So I didn't really prepare any remarks. I was under the impression this was all Q&A, so I think I'll just
Great.
give a little brief background and we can jump into questions.
Give me your background, and like I said, I have
Excellent.
keep you busy.
I appreciate that, Chair Geller, and thank you for the invitation to speak. FAIR is very honored to be here. I'm standing in for Paul Handerhan and will do my best to fill his shoes. As you know, Chair Geller, he knows a lot about insurance, so I'll do my best, but I think it would be best to start with kind of current state of affairs as the way FAIR sees it. So as I'm sure you are all aware, the property insurance market in Florida is in a bit of a state of crisis. We've had, I believe, about 6, maybe almost 7 insolvencies since 2007 in insurance companies. In addition to Citizens is growing in, I believe now it's 7,000 new policies a week. And so, yeah, and so we're in a position where consumers across the state of Florida are having trouble accessing insurance, of being able to afford their property insurance. And there is a variety of causes for this, one of which is the increased frequency and severity of catastrophic events. And as we all know, Florida is sort of just hanging out there, and we're one of the riskiest markets, which has led to a short-term problem, which is what's causing a lot of the insolvencies right now, and that reinsurance renewals are up on June 1st. And so such a risky market, reinsurance has become very expensive for property insurance companies. And that's putting them in an immediate precarious state, which is why you may have heard some comments in the press about why we needed a special session before June 1st, which is why there will be a special session in May. And in addition to some of these affordability costs and the increasing severity and frequency of storms, the rising cost of insurance premiums is also in part due to a lot of claims litigation. I think I saw a statistic that just came out that Florida has 8% of the, let me see, I wrote it down. Florida has 8% of all U.S. homeowners claims, but 76% of claims lawsuits. And so this is exacerbating the issue relating to increasing frequency and severity of storms, and is again rising the cost of insurance premiums, which leads to a lot of affordability issues in the Florida market. And I think another thing to note, which is not necessarily the property insurance market, but very related, is flood insurance premiums are also on the rise, as FEMA has updated how they rate policies through the NFIP. So you may have also heard some rumblings of people discussing their increasing costs of flood insurance rates, which has just all combined to create a bit of an affordability and access to insurance crisis, which, as we know, it's very important that people are able to afford insurance for their homes to be able to stay in their homes. So I think that's a good sort of where we are. If you think I've missed anything, Chair Geller, I look forward to your questions.
Thanks. First question, because I want to go over one of the things you said. When I heard about the 8% of policies of claims and 76% of litigation, I questioned that because it just kind of didn't make sense. The trial bar and the insurance industry, as you are aware, are like this. And they wrote a lengthy document saying, basically, no, that information was cherry picked and that all of that information that was used is proprietary. So there's no way that anybody other than the insurance industry or the insurance commissioners, which typically come from the insurance industry, and then when they're done, go back to the insurance industry. None of the data is public, that the trial bar disputes it and says that they just don't believe it and want to see the data. Do you have any reason to believe one way or the other and on the accuracy of that claim?
No, and I'm actually glad that you brought that up because I actually didn't know that, and it shows how, I mean, data can always be manipulated, or you take one line to create the story that you want, right? We know litigation is an issue in the Florida market and is causing premiums to rise, but I don't want to make the suggestion that's because all attorneys are bad or the trial bar is bad. You know, FAIR really tries to become a stakeholder for all groups. There's a handful of bad actors in all across, I would say, the Florida market. And so I think this handful of bad actors may be causing some of these problems, but I don't want to make the suggestion that it's the fault of attorneys. I certainly wouldn't want to say that.
Okay, well, let me ask you, do you know what percentage of the insurance premium comes from reinsurance? I thought in Florida it's very high number, 50, 60%, something like that. Do you know what percentage of the local premium comes from reinsurance?
I
know
don't know.
nationally it's 40%, but I think it's higher in Florida.
Yeah, so I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I would believe that you are correct, Chair, that it's higher than in particular in other markets across the country.
My understanding is a lot of the problem right now is caused by spiking reinsurance rates. Can you explain first, what is reinsurance?
Yeah, absolutely. So reinsurance is insurance for insurance companies. And right now we are seeing some of the highest costs for reinsurance for Florida insurance companies. Again, because Florida, from the perspective of reinsurers, is a bit of an unfavorable market because, well, we get hit the most by hurricanes. We're a peninsula right out in the middle of the ocean. And then another factor affecting the cost is some reinsurance companies, for the first time in, I believe, a long time, you might know how long this has happened, if this has ever happened before, better than me, Chair Geller, is that some of the reinsurance companies are requesting that the entire reinsurance fee is paid upfront in full on June 1st, which is an exorbitant cost, and many of Florida-based insurance companies simply don't have that cash on hand, which is leading to some insolvencies.
I never heard of that before. So question is, what you're saying, and I'm just checking, is that we hear about a lot of insolvencies. Normally, if the reinsurance covers a year, then you might have to pay it quarterly from the insurance company to the insurance company. But now they're requiring the insurance companies to pay the entire year in advance, even though the insurance companies haven't yet received the premiums from their policyholders. Is that correct?
Correct, Chair. They haven't yet received the premiums from their policyholders, but we're also looking at several years of companies losing money or not making a profit. And so there's not that cash on hand to be able to pay for the reinsurance for an entire year. And you run into the issue, if you don't have enough reinsurance, an insurance company could lose their rating or be downgraded, which has a large impact on the mortgage market, and again is leading to these insolvencies.
So, by the way, I'm going to take the first 20 or 25 minutes of questions, then open it up to everybody else. So please keep writing down questions. So is what you're saying, if the reinsurance companies were following the policy that they have always followed in the past, or practice, I shouldn't say policy, because, okay, if they were following the practice they've always followed in the past of paying quarterly instead of the whole thing in advance, that we would not be seeing a lot of the insolvencies we're seeing?
I wouldn't want to make that blanket statement that we wouldn't be at all, because in addition to this, having to pay upfront, the cost of reinsurance itself is the highest it's been in years. I think there's a variety of factors affecting that, including inflation, again, the rising costs and increased frequency and severity of storms. And so I also would consider that to be a critical factor, is that the private reinsurance market is incredibly tight, and it's very expensive for Florida insurers to purchase reinsurance.
Okay. Do insurance companies in Florida have regulated rates, which have to be approved by OIR, Office of Insurance Regulation? Do reinsurers have regulated rates?
You know what, Chair, I'm actually not sure about that.
I am, they don't.
I would say perhaps
I know the answer to every question I'm asking you. Okay.
Excellent, I appreciate that.
Okay. No, they don't. They are unregulated. Are most of the reinsurers in this country?
They are not. Most of them are in, I believe, the Caribbean.
Bermuda, but you also have companies like Swiss Re, Munich Re, the Italian one, Allianz Re, etc. Okay. My understanding is one of the reasons that they have been raising, that there's a increase in rates, has nothing to do with windstorm in Florida, but if there was a earthquake in Japan or California or someplace else where reinsurance is covering, or if there were God forbid, a nuclear accident or anything else. In this case, if they paid out a lot because of COVID, that will cause an increase in reinsurance rates, completely aside from the actuarially sound what's going to happen in Florida. Is that accurate?
I believe so.
Okay. I'm going to have to do a better job of trying to elicit information from you. Okay. Because right now I'm just asking leading questions. Can you explain what Rate Online is?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
Rate Online that the reinsurers charge. Do you know what that is?
To be honest, I don't. You might have a stronger grasp of
I'll
reinsurance than I do. I could certainly tell you a lot about the policy issues here, but.
I'll skip that one.
Okay.
Last question. Are reinsurers governed by antitrust?
Again, I don't know that one. I'm going to guess no because you're asking me though.
Okay. I know I can ask all these questions.
Yes. Again, I'm standing in for my boss, Paul Handerhan.
The person that was supposed to speak was Paul Handerhan, who's their president, and I know Paul knew the answers to all of these. So
yes,
he said, "Oh, don't worry, Beth knows everything I do." Okay.
Yes, as I said, I'm standing in for Paul Handerhan, who has been working in the insurance industry for 20 plus years. I myself am slightly newer to it, but I'm very happy to be here and will do my very best.
I apologize, Beth.
No, no worries.
Okay. Can you explain what the CAT fund is?
Yes, so the Florida Hurricane Catastrophe Fund, or the CAT Fund, was created to provide reinsurance at a more affordable rate to Florida insurers. I believe it was created after Hurricane Andrew.
It was. I was actually chair of the Property and Casualty Insurance Subcommittee when we created the CAT Fund, because I'm old.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I believe the purpose was to create more affordable reinsurance for Florida-based insurers.
Okay. And so it provides the reinsurance as an alternative to the more expensive private reinsurance?
Correct.
Okay. There is something, are you familiar with the rapid cash buildup provision?
Yes, I am familiar with the rapid cash buildup provision.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, so the rapid cash buildup factor is a 25% surcharge on, I believe, all reinsurance sold or on all policies sold. You'd have to, maybe you would know exactly how the payment is filled out, but it's to have a cash balance to meet future needs of the fund. And I believe right now there is an excess of $12 billion in rapid cash buildup factor on hand.
And does so I think what you've said is that the rapid cash buildup is a surcharge on all the Florida policies. So the rapid cash buildup directly raises the cost of insurance?
Yes, correct.
I believe it is the position of FAIR that the rapid cash buildup has served its purpose and that they no longer need the rapid cash buildup. And by eliminating that, that would reduce insurance rates immediately. Can you comment on that?
Yes, correct. So FAIR has, I think, two main positions on ways we could use the CAT fund to save consumers some of the cost of insurance right now and to make
What are
insurance
those
more
two
affordable.
positions?
And one of them is to remove the 25% surcharge for the rapid cash buildup factor, if not for forever, but at least temporarily, as a way to immediately put cash back in the hands of policyholders. But I think it's really important to note.
I'm now asking a question I don't know the answer to. How much would that, if they eliminated or suspended the rapid cash buildup, do you have any idea how much that would save consumers? And first question, I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, so we've done the research that both of our proposed changes to the CAT fund would save every family about $150 a year. I couldn't say necessarily if that's individually the surcharge or amending the attachment point, but I know that we've done research with a combination of the two. I'm sorry.
You know what the percentage decrease on an average homeowner's policy is?
I don't know the percentage.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that the rapid cash buildup is one of the two things that they could do. What is the other?
Yeah, I do want to make one, I'm sorry if you'll just allow me, Chair Geller, one comment on the rapid cash buildup factor, in that when FAIR is proposing that we don't need to pay the surcharge anymore, I think it's really important to note that there is a purpose for this cash balance if there's ever a need to pay all those claims, if there's a large CAT event. And so it's really important to note that the cash balance right now is over $12 billion, which really would be enough money to fund if needed for a CAT event. So it wouldn't leave consumers high and dry if there was a large hurricane that hit the state. And I think that's really important to note when we consider getting rid of that requirement. And so then I'll move on to our second proposed amendment to the CAT fund, which is to return the attachment point of the reinsurance coverage from the current level of $8.2 billion down to $4.5 billion, which is what
the attachment point is. Can you explain that to everyone else?
Yes, absolutely. So the attachment point, I think a good way to describe it is it's similar to the deductible for your own claims. And so it's at what point does the reinsurance kick in and help pay the costs of the insurance claims for these insurance companies. And so in lowering the attachment point to 4.5 billion instead of the current 8.2 billion, these insurance companies have access to the reinsurance sooner, and they have access to more of this affordable reinsurance from the state rather than having to turn to the private market and buy the more expensive reinsurance at some of these lower levels.
I would have asked Paul this, but since he's not here, I will just make his statements. The actuarially sound rate in some of the lower tranches might be 10 or 15%. For the same tranche of insurance, the private market might charge 40 or 50%. So the difference between the actuarially sound number of 15% and the rate charged by the unregulated reinsurer of 45%, you've got a 30% difference, and that's the savings that you're referring to. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you that one. But
yes, okay. No, yeah, it's a significant difference, and it does make an impact for these insurance companies.
Okay, can you explain how the attachment point, if you know, if you don't, say, okay, how
Okay.
from 4.5 to 8?
I actually could not answer that. Perhaps you could,
Don't worry
Chair
about
Geller.
it. Okay. All right. You mentioned in your opening remarks that flood insurance has gone up. Can you explain who this is affecting the most and why?
Yes, so the majority of flood insurance in the US, as I'm sure most of you probably know, is provided by the National Flood Insurance Program, which is run by the federal government through FEMA. And historically, the NFIP created their rates or priced their insurance policies by using their flood insurance rate maps. And so depending on what zone you're in, that is going to be how much you have to pay for a policy. And depending on your zone, you may or may not be required to have flood insurance as a condition of your mortgage. This system has long been criticized in the fact that it's not what most private insurance companies will look, for example, at the individual property and say, okay, this property is at a risk of XYZ happening to it. This is how much it costs to rebuild the property, etc. And then create a specific insurance price, policy price for that individual property. And so FEMA was long criticized for using just broad maps, and that, you know, if you were on one side of the map, you might have to pay a certain price. If you're on another one, you might have to pay another price without consideration of individual factors to the property. And so FEMA undertook a program called Risk Rating 2.0 in an effort to modernize the NFIP and hopefully increase its solvency, which is a heavily in debt government program. Just as a side note. Anyway, and so Risk Rating 2.0, FEMA also calls Equity in Action, and it's their effort to rate policy premiums based on an individual property. And they call it Equity in Action because historically, again, as I mentioned, it didn't matter how much it costs to rebuild the home. So a $50,000 house and a $500,000 house were paying the same flood insurance rate if they're in the same zone. And many people consider this to be unequitable. And so that's why you may have heard FEMA calling it Equity in Action, because now they would take into consideration the fact that this house is worth $500,000, this house is worth $50,000. They probably should be paying different insurance rates. And so Risk Rating 2.0 went into effect for all new policies on October 1st. And then for all existing policies on April 1st, FEMA has been, a lot of their messaging on this program is saying that it's not going to increase premiums too much. Most people won't see their premiums increase by very much. We've seen that's not necessarily the case, especially in South Florida. And so there is an 18% rate cap on the increase of all premiums. And so anyone could see their policy increase by about 18%. And again, this went into effect for all policyholders on April 1st. And so we're still sort of seeing the effects of the program, but I certainly think we could say in South Florida, we have seen flood insurance rates rise, which, comes at a similar time when property insurance rates are rising. And if you have mandatory insurance, this really can cause an affordability issue for you in your property. That's it.
By the way, you're mostly right. If you're buying more flood insurance, you are paying more. So if you're in a $500,000 home versus a $50,000, you are paying more. But the amount that they pay, I think, caps out as like $300. So your argument is correct on the zones, but you do pay more in a $500,000 home than a $50,000 just because you're buying less.
Right, because you would buy a higher amount of insurance.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
My understanding, or what Paul told me last night, is that it's actually affecting the poorer areas more than the more affluent areas. Is that correct?
So FAIR has done a little bit of research on our own, mostly looking in Broward County specifically. Our offices are based in Fort Lauderdale, so that was kind of a natural place for us to look. And we did notice some patterns of places specifically. So the way FEMA releases the data is they do it by zip code. In this zip code, you'll see properties insurance rates increase between $10 to $20 or decrease between $10 to $20. And anyway, so that's how they released the data. And we looked at the data and we definitely saw a pattern of zip codes with historically lower incomes, or in other ways, perhaps more of a vulnerable neighborhood or zip code would actually end up paying more than some of these more affluent zip codes, which goes, in our opinion, a little bit against the equity in action. And I think it points to some historical inequities in where people build houses and who's been able to build their properties where, and what communities are more affected by flooding.
My understanding on the NFIP that most states lose money or they are paying not enough to cover their losses. And there's only one major state in the country that has historically paid far more than their fair share. Is that correct? And do you know what state that is?
I have heard that before. I believe it would be Florida. Yeah, and I think
Florida's the only donor state to the NFIP, and we donate mass amounts every year. Every other state is.
Yeah, the NFIP is about $17 billion in debt, although it might be 20 now, and Congress has forgiven the debt in the past. There are several proposals now to continue forgiving the debt, but yes, Chair, you're correct.
My understanding is that, and by the way, I'm going to ask about another 6 minutes of questions and then throw it open to everyone else. My understanding is that in Florida, since Hurricane Andrew, pre-Andrew, most of the insurance was written by the National, the State Farm, Allstate, Nationwide, Geico, etc. Now the overwhelming majority is written by Florida domestics. So a lot of people think that companies like State Farm have mostly pulled out of Florida. Have you ever heard of DaVinci Reinsurance?
I have not. No, sir.
Never mind. I was going to. DaVinci is owned by State Farm, and I was going to try and make the point that State Farm didn't pull out. They just shifted from the regulated rates they can charge from an insurance company to the unregulated rates they can charge as a reinsurance company.
So they can make 30%.
So they can make a lot more, but I won't make that point because, okay, next question. Roofers. A lot of people are blaming roofers for the problem. Are you familiar with the issue?
Yes, sir, I am.
Can you elaborate on what the allegations are and whether or not you agree with them?
Yes, so I think that the allegations, when there's a lot of conversations in the property insurance market in Florida, people are like, well, it's these roofers and these fraud schemes across the state. And again, I want to say that I don't want to cast an entire group with a broad brush. There's a few bad actors within every group, but I think that the solicitation and fraud is very real and is definitely contributing to the problem in Florida. And so the common roofing scheme, as you know, as I've been told, and Chair Geller, please correct me, I've never had someone knock on my door and do this myself, is that one of these bad actors who's engaging in some of these fraudulent roofing claims would go around a neighborhood with perhaps that they know is older, has older roofs, knock on someone's door, ask to see their roof, find a few missing shingles or something along those lines, and say, well, this was caused by this wind event or this hurricane that happened recently, and give the property owner typically an iPad with a document. They sign a document. Often it's people who maybe English isn't their first language, they're a little older perhaps. They'll sign this document without real understanding of what they're signing. The roofer will leave and then submit a claim to their insurance company to get a new roof. And sometimes along the way there could be maybe they'll propose, say, oh, the roof will cost $60,000 to fix, but maybe it would actually only cost $40,000. And then when they get the $60,000, they'll hire another company to do the $40,000 roof fix and then pocket the $20,000 as an example. Chair Geller, is that your understanding of how some of these roofing schemes would go?
That is partially one of the things that we have seen and that there's been extensive testimony on, is that again, not most of the roofers,
No,
but a
exactly.
few very large roofing companies that have caused a huge problem. They will say, we will give you they'll start off sending a letter to an entire subdivision and say, our records indicate that there was a recent, typically they're non-named storms, a hailstorm or a severe wind event that hasn't risen to a named storm. And we will give you a $500 American Express gift card for the right to go up and examine your roof. And everybody says, well, sure, I've got nothing to lose. They'll let them go up. 95% of the time, they will find something. They will then, even though Florida law says you may not waive the deductible, they are waiving the deductible, which is in violation of Florida law. And they are saying, we'll get you a free new roof. You have an old roof, we will get you a free new roof, which again, if it's a $40,000 roof and you have a $5,000 deductible, you must charge that $5,000, but they're waiving it so that they can get people a free roof. And that has been, according to the insurance industry, the single biggest driver in what's causing insurance rates to spike is roof claims. Are you aware of the legislation that was passed in 2021 dealing with that?
I am aware. You're referring to Senate Bill 76?
Yes. Can you explain what they did specifically about roofers?
I will do my best, Chair. So
If you need help, I know what they did, but I want you to, okay.
Yeah, you can help me fill in the holes. So in the 2021 legislative session, the large reform bill trying to address some of this fraudulent activity by these roofers, was Senate Bill 76, which aimed to reduce fraud and target solicitation, as well as, I believe, unregulated or unlicensed contractors. And part of it was restricting what words could be used, what language could be said by some of these roofers. But we have yet to see the full effects of this because it's been in litigation, I believe, ever since the bill was signed into law.
Very good. Yeah, actually what that bill did, it did a lot of things, but specifically on roofers, says you can't, if you're going to use the word insurance, and it's something like it's implying that you're insurance. First of all, only public adjusters or attorneys can file insurance claims. So all of these people that are at roof companies says, we are insurance experts, will file your claim for you, are violating existing law. This cracked down on them. It prohibited paying somebody or giving anything of value to go up on the roof. Because like I said, right now they're offering, it made it a felony to waive the third degree felony to waive the deductible. So you can't say free roof. And the roofers went to federal court, got a injunction against the enforcement of that because they said, if you do this, Judge, before the trial, which is last I heard was scheduled for June, you'll put us out of business. So we're asking you to enjoin the enforcement of that until there's a trial, because once you put us out of business, we can't go back and restart it. So the judge gave them the injunction until the trial. So we don't know about that. Let me ask now, if there's other questions. I've got another 7 pages, Beth. Just kidding. But are there other questions from any of the members here? Because I'm sure that all of us are hearing from our constituents about problems of the high cost of insurance and availability of insurance. Are there additional questions from anyone else? If not, I'll go back. Commissioner Goldberg, followed by Mayor Ziotti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are you seeing in regards to the commercial real estate industry? Because that's where I kind of reside and play in that sandbox most of my life. And we're doing a project now, and I'm seeing the insurance numbers that we're getting quoted for this thing that our lenders are requiring are almost double what we paid, a couple years ago. So, I mean, the increases are just so dramatic for all of it, liability, wind, everything.
Yes, so I think it is maybe too early to have any numbers on saying exactly how this is impacting the real estate market, but to exactly what you're saying, like we're hearing conversations about it could and how it would cool the really hot real estate market in Florida right now, because as you know, property insurance and in a lot of cases in Florida, flood insurance is required as a part of your mortgage. And so, we get calls to our office at least once a week of people calling and saying my insurance went up and now my mortgage is up this amount this month. I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage next month. So there's going to come a certain point in which it will impact people's ability to get and continue to pay for their mortgages, which is an unfortunate impact of this crisis in Florida.
Okay, Carrie, let me try and answer your question. The cost in Florida, as opposed to most of the country, in Florida, the cost of reinsurance is over half of the policy. That's on both residential and commercial. Nationally, it's between a third and 40%. In Florida, what I've been told is 50 to 60%. That is an automatic pass-through. So unlike other insurance rates, which are regulated, if your reinsurance goes up by 80%, and let's say it's half because that makes the math easy. If it's half of the policy and your reinsurance goes up by 80%, that means your total policy has gone up by 40%, and that does not require approval from the state. That's an automatic pass-through. So since the cost of reinsurance has gone up so much, that is automatically affecting both residential and commercial. And again, the reinsurance rates are unregulated. They are not governed by antitrust. There's a few in this country, but most are in foreign countries. And they have the ability to basically be a cartel if they want to, although arguably, once, they'll fight each other for market share. But, again, they lost a lot of money on COVID because they do reinsure life insurance to a degree, but the bigger issue is when a lot of buildings closed, they filed claims with their homeowner, with their commercial insurance, saying for the loss of business income. And they took massive hits during the reinsurance, during COVID. And so they're trying to replenish their coffers, and their rates do not have to be actuarially sound. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, it's scary, obviously.
Mayor Ziotti to Ms. Brownstein.
Would you say that public adjusters are a major problem with regard to insurance?
I thank you for the question. I would say again, as with any group we've discussed, there are certainly a handful of bad actors, but I would definitely not say that every public adjuster is doing anything wrong, but any bad actor who is encouraging fraudulent claims is in the wrong. And I have heard cases of some of these roofing schemes are sometimes they're working in conjunction with an adjuster, I think, as an example. But again, I think with any group, there's a handful of bad actors.
Well, I'm speaking from personal experience with my father, who on his own, not knowing the language very well, a buddy told him about this and ended up supposedly getting $40,000 to redo his roof. But then the attorney's fees, who filed interrogatories and all sorts of things on behalf of my father never signed anything, as well as on behalf of my mother, who never signed anything, and had been dead already for 5 years when all of this happened. I went into the attorney's office and people just don't check. They don't do that background. So are you doing any type of, trying to pass anything to make sure that these adjusters, do some kind of, I don't know.
Mayor Ziani,
We
it sounds
do
like
our,
what you said was an attorney issue, not a public adjuster issue.
well, because they work in conjunction. And so, and they work with the roofers as well. So is there anybody or anybody checking on them or filing any kind of regulation for them that they have to adhere to?
I can answer that they are heavily regulated by OIR, Office of Insurance Regulation, and Department of Financial Services. There's a group, FAPIA, which I'll tell you about later, which is some of the public adjusters, that if you file a complaint about a public adjuster, they will investigate, and they report a lot of the public adjusters if they find a problem to the Department of Financial Services themselves. But I would ask if you get me that information, I'll check into it, because I know that what FAPIA has found, and they've been trying to crack down on this, over 90% of the complaints that they get about public adjusters end up being about people that are not licensed public adjusters,
And that's why.
that are calling themselves loss consultants, or I am a adjuster. They don't use the word public adjuster,
Right.
and they are violating the law by doing that, but I'll follow up with you on that. Are there, yes,
I do
additional
have
questions?
one more question.
Please take your time.
Separate apart, what I've come across now are seniors who have paid their mortgage and are not required to have homeowners insurance. And because of the way things are now, they drop their homeowners insurance. But now when they go to apply for some funds to help them do their, whether it's shutters, ARPA funds are coming down and cities are helping with that. But part of it is a requirement to have insurance. So now for the first time in however many years, they're being hit with this crazy amount of insurance. Is anything being done to kind of help those, the senior population? That's my sandbox.
Beth?
I don't know of any specific program to help with affordability of seniors, and insurance affordability for seniors specifically. Chair Geller, maybe you know of something I haven't heard of, but I would say in FAIR's efforts to push for legislation that helps ensure that consumers have access to affordable and quality insurance coverage, that we would consider seniors under that umbrella, and are trying to do everything we can to encourage legislation that will reduce the cost of insurance for Florida consumers. And in addition, because I think flood insurance also has an impact on seniors in a similar way, FAIR is also encouraging Congress to approve a means-tested affordability program for the NFIP to help with the affordability of the program as rates rise.
But nothing specific for seniors.
No, I'm not. There is no program. I will tell you that I'm not sure you necessarily could. And what you're talking about is that if, every mortgage requires you to have insurance. If you don't, they will do something called a forced place, which is horrible because that's the most expensive by far insurance you can get. But if you're going to be getting like a PACE loan or something like that, it's a loan. So in that case, they do require that you have insurance to protecting your property. So that's what you're talking about. Were you done?
Yes.
Are there additional questions? Not, I've got one more, and then we'll, I think, probably take it. I want to discuss, you mentioned quality insurance. I want to discuss the issue of diminution of coverage. And first, before Hurricane Andrew, and I was elected to the legislature in '88, Andrew struck in '92. So I was the chair of the Property and Casualty Insurance Subcommittee when Andrew struck. Prior to that, your insurance deductible was typically $250, $500, or $1,000. Since then, it's gone a lot higher. First, if you have let's say it's a $500,000 home, which in today's market is probably a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. If it suffers a $40,000 loss and you have a 10% deductible, I think a lot of people think that the 10% deductible, if you have a $40,000 loss, means you have a $4,000 deductible. Do you know, can you explain how the deductible actually works?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Okay, if you have a $500,000 home today, you can buy a 1%, 2%, 5%, or 10% deductible on your policy.
Right.
If you have a $500,000 home and you have a 10% deductible, do you know how that deductible works?
To be honest, I'm
Okay, worry
assuming the
about it.
question is either the deductible is on the value of the home or the cost of
Right.
the claim.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
assuming
the
that's
thing.
what you're
A lot of
referencing.
people- You're correct. A lot of people assume it's on the amount of the claim, and it's not. It's based on the value of the home. So if you get a 10% deductible and you have a $500,000 home and you get hit with a $40,000 loss to your home, it's under the deductible and they pay you nothing, which most people don't. It gets worse than that. I was going to ask you these questions, but I won't. Most insurance companies today do not cover your fence, do not cover your pool cage, do not cover your sheds, and probably don't cover your trees. So let's say you have and by the way, Office of Insurance Regulation, you should know this. It's important that everybody know this because you will get questions from your constituents. When the legislature declined to reduce roof coverage, Office of Insurance Regulation approved it on their own. So if you have, and I can pass this out so they can make you copies. If you have a shingle roof and your roof is over 15 but less than 16 years old, they will only pay you 40% of the replacement cost. So let's assume, and it goes at shingle, metal, concrete, clay, wooden, tar, gravel. They have all of these different, it's a deductible chart. If you have a $600,000 home with a 10% deductible, $60,000. It has a 15-year-old shingle roof, and it will cost $40,000 to replace the shingle roof. The house has $7,000 in damage to the fence, $10,000 to the pool cage, $5,000 to trees, and $40,000 more in addition to the roof. Total loss is $102,000. Anybody want to guess how much the insurance company will pay? Zero. Because the $7,000 damage to the fence is not covered, doesn't count towards your deductible. $10,000 to pool cage isn't covered, $5,000 to trees. None of that's covered, so what you have is the $40,000 to the house, $40,000 to the roof. $40,000 to the roof, they're only paying 40% of that, so that's $16,000. You add that to the additional 40, that's 56. You have 600,000 home with the 10,000 deductible, 60,000, $102,000 worth of damage, payment of zero. People don't understand this. When I talk about the legislature, because I was a member for 20 years, I still speak of the legislature as we, not as they, except on home rule when I talk about them. When the big one comes to Florida, people will march on Tallahassee with torches and pitchforks. By the way, that's the old people marching on the castle. You've all seen the horror movies. Okay. They will march on Tallahassee with torches and pitchforks, and we will deserve it because people don't understand. They're paying massive amounts of insurance. And unless their home is totaled, they're probably not going to get anything or very much because of the constant reductions. My home has gone, without my doing anything, has gone from 600,000 to 850,000 in the last 3 years, just because our property insurance market has gone crazy. I have a 5% deductible. What that means is my deductible went from 30,000 to 42,500. So now on the 42.5, and again, that's ignoring my full cage, my fence, my trees, ignoring all of those, people don't realize they love the fact that their home has gone up in value. But they don't realize that that also means that their deductible has gone up by huge amounts. So unless they lose their roof, and even if they lose their roof, if it's good, because of this, it's probably going to be, it's still not covered. By the way, this is not required, but this is authorizing. This is a schedule that insurance companies are permitted to put in their policy. Most will, a few of the better companies won't, but most will. And so we have a dual problem here. Your problem is both affordability, which is largely driven by reinsurance rates. It's availability, because not only have rates gone up, but because they are now wanting to be paid an entire year in advance, that's making some insurance companies insolvent. Most national companies keep big reserves. The local domestic companies reinsure everything. They typically have very, very minimal reserves. And so they're hurt worse by the reinsurance spike. So when you have the combination of soaring rates and diminishing coverage, Florida is really in a bind right now. I assume most of you have heard from your constituents about this. I've heard from some of mine. Commissioner Beam, I'm sure you've heard from, it's something that we need to be aware of because we will be getting questions. So in my last statement is there is a crisis now, but they're trying, legislators react to a crisis, but the problem is we have no control over the reinsurance. What they're trying to do is deal with attorneys' fees, deal with reduce coverage further, things like that. The Speaker of the House does not want to do that because we passed Senate Bill, I think it was 76, Beth, was that it, last year? But remember, insurance policies are issued residential for a full year. That bill last year, which did major rewrite, didn't take effect until July 1, 2021. It only affects policies written after July 1, 2021. So that means that by January, only half the policies in the state had even were written under the new law. After you write it, you still have to suffer a loss. Then you have to file a claim. Then the claim has to be rejected. Then you have to go to litigate. So the Speaker of the House is saying, we don't want to do a new law until we see what effect the old law had. But the things that FAIR is suggesting are things that won't take effect a year or two from now. They would reduce it right now if the legislature passes that. So you need to be aware of these because, we'll get questions from your constituents. Beth, did you have any final questions, comments, remarks?
I have, thank you, Chair. I just want to say, some of these proposed changes that we have to the CAT fund is short term to help this immediate issue, in particular with these June 1st renewals, and hopefully keep some companies afloat, which, pertains to the access and affordability issue. But I also want to say, as Chairman Geller is going through all of these issues and just talking about how complicated it is. I mean, I spend every day learning and talking about insurance in Florida, and I don't even know the answer to a lot of these questions. I just think it's so important for local leaders to make an effort to educate their constituents about, what these fraudulent schemes look like, what it means to have your deductible like this. When your flood insurance rate is going up, that means that your property is at higher risk of flooding, and understanding some of these issues from a financial literacy perspective and ability to keep your property and protect your home and property for the long term. And so I just think as local leaders and as Chairman Geller is going through these, I think that's so important to consider and take into notice. And thank you for the invitation for FAIR and myself to be here. I'm sorry Paul was unavailable, but hopefully between me and the chair, we were able to answer a lot of questions.
Commissioner Burke.
Real quick, Beth, you mentioned trying to educate our citizens. Do you have any kind of a primer written that's real simple that we can distribute?
I have a very simple one-pager on the CAT fund reforms, but I'm not sure if that's what you're looking for, because I don't think that necessarily addresses some of like this deductible conversation. So would you think something on like a one?
Beth, what I would ask you to do to respond to Commissioner Furr, could FAIR prepare something that elected officials could distribute, dealing with the roof fraud issue, which is the biggest, other than the reinsurance cost that we can't do anything about other than the CAT fund. If FAIR could prepare a document that elected officials could distribute saying, warning, if somebody comes and offers to pay you to look at your roof, probably violating the law, don't do it. If they're offering to give you a free roof, that's absolutely violating the law, don't do it. If they claim that they're an attorney or a public adjuster, ask to see, prove it, ask to see either a bar number or a business, something that says licensed public adjuster or attorney, esquire, these little things that we could distribute to show that, to try and eliminate the fraud. I think that's an excellent.
That's one part. The other part is things to look for in a policy. Things that, what is your deductible? Those kind of things that, real simple, something that somebody could understand if they're reading, what should I be looking for?
Excellent idea. And also like the deductible, to explain if you're getting the deductible, that it's the deductible on your entire house, not on the loss.
That would be real helpful, all of us, because I don't think
I don't know if anybody, that's a great idea.
so.
And FAIR is probably the best group to do that.
We can't do much.
Right.
Except for the information.
And maybe the links to the Florida Bar to see if they're in good standing.
Yeah, well,
And the link for
the
business license.
Yeah, links to FAPIA, links to the bar, links, business license would be OAR. But any links to check licensure.
If you were able to do that, Beth, that would be extremely
I
I think
so
it's a great idea.
thank you, Chair, Commissioner, everyone for the suggestions. I will say, and I'm going to put it in the chat right now, I don't know if everyone will be able to have it, but the Office of the Florida Insurance Consumer Advocate has a really fantastic website about the fraud and the contractor fraud, and specifically what exactly to look for, what you should do, who you should talk to. And so I actually think that might be the best resource for the fraud, but I think things to look for in a policy, deductible, I think that's absolutely something that FAIR could put together. Also, if
What
you
I would
wanted
ask
the
is
fraud
if
one,
you
but
could- I'm sorry,
That'd be great. Thank you.
Beth, if you could put together a one pager that would have a paragraph on the insurance fraud also.
Yep.
And then a link to the
Yep.
Insurance Consumer Advocate, along with the other links that Mayor Ziotti requested.
There's a comment from Dr. Jonathan Guevara.
I'm sorry, I can't read that.
It says, these are great ideas, but the most vulnerable consumers are older residents and they are not very good users of electronic information.
And that's why if we have these, I give town meetings, I'm sure Commissioner, all of us elected officials go places. And if you create a document which we can duplicate, that we can give out at our meetings, that will be very helpful.
Well, if you can print a brochure that we could put in the libraries, that would be very good.
Right,
Because that's where you're seeing a lot of the, those are using printed materials.
right.
And we can just put it in every library.
Or even, well, as elected officials have library night to help
Right.
seniors,
Right.
Yep.
stuff like that.
In my case, I have town meetings scheduled in every city I represent, plus I give speeches all the time. And I know all of us do, because you can't be an elected official without doing that. And if we bring these brochures, that'll be helpful. Thank you. And Beth, let me say, I've been doing this for 34 years, but you did great. And thank you so much. We appreciate your being here.
thank you. Yeah, we will work on the one pager brochure, and Chair Geller, I assume you'd be able to distribute that to the rest of the group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Ben. All right. Moving right along. We have 15 minutes left, but we don't have a lot to do. So, action items, minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Commissioner Goldberg, seconded by Mayor Ziotti. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed. Show that adopted unanimously. Financial report is going to fly through it as he promised.
Good morning, everyone. That's what I'm here for. So I'm glad to present solid financials for our SFRPC. We go to page 1. We can see that the general fund's total assets went down by $89,870, as well as total liabilities on fund balance. And that's due to the payment of salaries and other obligations. The federal, state, and local funds went up by $10,362, as well as total liabilities on fund balance. Revolving loan funds went up by $13,434, as well as total liabilities on fund balance, and the South Florida Regional Prosperity Institute remains unmodified. We go to page 2. Half of the year has lapsed, so we're at 50% of the year. We look at the total revenues, we're at 60% of the budget for the total for the fiscal year. And the total expenses are at 41% compared to the 50% of the year lapsed. I want to mention also that the funds for the RLF CARES have been totally disbursed at 100% with 3 months in advance. So if you guys have any questions?
If there are questions, the next meeting is going to be a full business meeting. So I will ask if you will hold your questions till the next meeting. And seeing no questions, we move on to the next topic. Councilmember Bailey. Do you have a question?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, going to accept the financials,
Is
correct?
there, yes, is there a motion to accept the financials? Moved by Mayor Ziotti, seconded by Commissioner Goldberg. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, like sign. Show is adopted without objection. Now, we are on our comprehensive plan amendment reviews consent agenda. Attorney Gorin,
Thank
will
you,
you
Mr.
please read the
Chair. Thank you,
proposed?
Senator. Item number 4C, which is on the consent agenda for the record, is the following proposed items. Land use amendment, City of Aventura, 22-01 City of Coral Gables, 22-02 ESR, City of Hallandale Beach, 22-01 ESR, and Isla Mirada, Village of Islands, or Isles, as it says here, 22-01A CSC, and last but not least, on the proposed, the City of Margate at 22-01 ESR.
This is the consent agenda. Is there anybody online to speak on any of these?
No.
Not seeing anybody to speak on these. Is there any objection on these? Seeing no objection, is there a motion to approve these? Moved by Mayor Ziotti, seconded by Commissioner Codiron. Seeing no debate, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, like sign. Show it adopted unanimously. Let's open the public hearing now on the adopted one. Can you advise me, is there anybody online that wish to speak on any of the adopted items?
I have not gotten any public comment.
All right. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Is there anyone who wishes to speak? If not, show the public hearing closed. Please read the adopted.
Thank you for the record, Mr. Chair and council members. The City of Coral Gables, 22-01 ESR. Next is the Town of Cutler Bay, 22-01 ESR. Next is the City of Doral, 22-01 ESR. Next is the City of Fort Lauderdale, 21-01 ESR. Next, the City of Hialeah, 21-04 ESR. Next, the City of Lighthouse Point, 20-01 ESR. Next up is the City of Marathon, 21-02 ACSC. Next up is the City of Miami at 21-01 EFR. Next is the City of Miami Beach, 21-01 ESR. Next up is the City of Pembroke Pines at 21-01 ESR. And last but not least is the Village of Pinecrest. And for the record, Mayor Cordino and I have conversed. He is legally able under the statute governing the issues of conflicts to vote on the subject as the mayor. He's sitting in a different legal role today as a council member versus the mayor's role in the City of Pinecrest, Village of Pinecrest. And he legally consulted with me. There's no violation of section 112.3143.
Thank you, sir. We've already established if there are no speakers, we have open and closed public hearing. Is there any debate? Is there any debate? Seeing no debate, is there a motion to approve the adopted? Moved by Mayor Codiron, seconded by Commissioner Furr. Seeing no debate, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Show it adopted unanimously. I am now opening public hearing on Regional Issues Comprehensive Plan Amendment Review, of which there are none, and Resolution 2022-01, Restoring Resilient REITs Act of 2021. Are there any speakers on either of these items online? Are there any speakers on any of these items online? Seeing no speakers, public hearing is now closed. There are no regional issues. We are now on Resolution 2022-01, Restoring Resilient REITs Act. Commissioner Furr, would you care to discuss this, or would you want our executive director?
Actually, I'm fine. I know this has been a long time coming. It's back and forth the last 4 or 5 years, actually, of trying to get an act passed through Congress on this. It looks like it actually has a chance.
Yes, they're all signed up.
Yeah, so did I see something that came through email the other day wondering if we wanted to go
We're going, yeah,
to DC?
end of June.
End of June, that's what that was.
Oh, no, I got it too.
Okay. That was, and it was talking about us and the treasure codes.
Oh, great, I haven't seen that yet.
Yes.
So
How did
we all
we
can send.
didn't see that? Not sure how that happened.
How many emails do you get a day?
Yeah.
Right.
But I think we're talking about-
Zoom there more than what you guys got.
You know, but
but I think we're talking about a joint, yeah, that's what that was. Do you know what the date was for that?
I do.
Will you send
I'll
it to
give it to you offline. Yes,
It just came through.
it just did. And I don't even know that it was through South Florida Regional and Treasure Coast. I think it was more of all of the different counties that have been participating in it.
That might be it.
I think it came through to us as in that format.
Maybe we should get back to pass this thing too.
Well,
No, good.
FAC has, when is FAC's meeting?
June.
It'll
June?
be,
It will be,
Or May.
tentative date is June 22nd and 23rd.
For DC?
Yes,
when's that?
I think it's right around.
very next week.
Okay.
That should be good.
Yes.
Okay.
That might be worth trying.
Well, I guess facts would meet after the trip to DC. So,
Correct.
Oh, it should be the other way.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Cosio, can you please follow up on that and
yes,
send out a memo to,
sure.
okay. So, can you please explain what the resolution?
Yes, thank you. Over the last.
And all members, you should all have this in front of you.
Yes, it was sent to you on Friday. I'm sorry for the late, we received it late. So basically, every year, this council, when it's had the opportunity, has supported passage of the Restoring Resilience Relief Act of 2021. I know that our counties are also supporting passage and have received resolutions. Monroe County already passed theirs. So this was an opportunity to just collect everybody's resolution and reaffirm our support of this legislation. That is the resolution.
Thank you. All right, is there anybody here that is opposed to REITs? Seeing none. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Move to approve.
Moved by Councilmember Goldire, seconded by Commissioner Furr. During debate, seeing no debate, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Show that adopted unanimously.
That one first.
Okay, next, the public comment. Is there anyone online that has any public comment? Is there anyone online that has any public comment?
Mr. Chair.
Not seeing anyone, please show the public comment closed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Attorney Gordon.
For the record, there is a lawyer who sent an email to the staff for filing with the public record of this meeting. Her name is Angela Dawson. We're currently, that being the SFRPC, in litigation on a mortgage foreclosure with her. She's filed that document for public inspection. It is legally authorized to be filed, but it's not authorized, in my opinion, to be debated today because you are in litigation, and that the subject matter of which is currently before a judge. Other than that, the document that she submits speaks for itself, and as a matter of law, need not be read by you or by the secretary.
Okie dokie. Well, whatever he said.
Yes, it is
Okay.
filed, and the clerk has it for the record, correct, Kathy? And Alicia, thank you both very much.
Okay, and that was in reference to the public comment period. All right, we are on discussion items now. Executive Director's report, I understand.
Thank you. No comments. I just want to thank the executive committee for supporting the increase in dues over 5 years. Really very helpful, and let's hope it goes all the way. So thank you.
Okay, legal counsel.
Given the nature of time, I defer and over my time back to the chair.
Thank you. Council member report. Any council members? Seeing none. Ex officio.
No reports, no
Okay.
reports.
We're going to be asking you at our next meeting to give, lengthier ones covering this month and next month. Staff, did you have anything?
Yes, well, I don't know can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I wanted to announce that the governor appointed Secretary Perdue, Jared Perdue, who had extensive experience with FDOT for 18 years, and most recently has served as the District 5 Secretary, as the Secretary of Transportation for DOT.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, we're on to Roman numeral 6, program reports and activities. Let's start off with the Alternative Fuel Corridor Drive Green Fleet Expo, which is 6F.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alicia. I'm the Clean Cities Coordinator, and I have been heading up a regional application with Palm Beach, Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties to nominate alternative fuel corridors within the region. This is all in regards to the infrastructure bill. In order for us to apply for those discretionary funds, we need to have alternative fuel corridors designated here. There's none in Monroe County, so that is a big concern for me. So I've been working to make sure that we are all covered and all able to apply. So the reason why I'm bringing this up to you today is I've been working with Miami-Dade. They actually created a resolution which was approved on Tuesday of last week. I've been working with Broward County as well. And unfortunately with Monroe, I've been working with Ms. Rhonda Hague, but she was not able to actually create the resolution on time for your commission meeting. However, she did say that Monroe County would provide a letter of support. So these corridors are for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and the corridors we are recommending is US 1, the Sawgrass Expressway, US 27, and 441, which aligns with FDOT's analysis for the entire state.
And my understanding is this requires us to actually do nothing because
It is.
I had some concerns. There are no gas stations on State Road A1A because of environmental reasons. I was wondering about, using the electrical ones, but you said this doesn't require us to actually do anything.
No, this does not. It's
This is trying to get money from
Yes,
federal
that is it.
government.
Yes, we want to make sure that we are covered for whatever infrastructure bills are coming. FDOT is actually taking care of the actual signage, putting all that up. We are just saying, hey, we support this. We need this down here because we want to apply for money.
Commissioner Furr, you're recognized, sir.
Did you happen to see 60 Minutes last time?
I did not. What happened?
Nor I.
They had it was pretty interesting what they were doing in Sweden. And when we had the electrical vehicle conference recently, one of the things that came up was what happens if everybody has an electrical vehicle and we have to have a evacuation?
Right,
Big question.
That is a huge question.
right.
What they were doing in
Take
Sweden,
one
what they were doing was they were making it so that just by driving over the road, they had underneath the ways of charging the cars while they're driving across.
There is a pilot that is actually being done in the state of Michigan.
Oh, it's that right? Detroit's doing, Detroit is
So
doing.
I'm personally waiting to see how
That
it
was
works
amazing
up
technology.
there to see if that is something that we can actually implement.
Yeah, just by driving over it, you're charging.
Changer for that.
Yes.
It would be providing that they have that everywhere you're going.
Provided the car is actually moving.
Also,
Well, you
too,
know, I mean,
also that the
No, even if it's not
utility
moving.
take
While it's
cars.
consistent.
Yeah.
Even if everybody's going, all of a sudden everybody's stopping.
Right, so all of these people that have spent all this money on electric vehicles that operate by plug-in, sorry, they're now obsolete. Okay,
Tesla just said, yeah.
okay, all right.
So you're looking.
Yes, and then also too, I'm hosting a Drive Green Fleet Expo. If you would please, I'm going to send out an email blast, but if you could let your fleet managers know and sustainability directors know as well. I'm going to have discussions, presentations from FDOT. I'm also trying to secure right now someone from DEP to discuss the funding and the NEVI formula of what's coming through the state of Florida. We're also going to have where you can actually test drive EVs at the Amco Picture Center. So, yes.
All right, are there any questions? Do we?
To FPO also.
I'm working with MPO.
Okay, good.
Yes. I'm working actually with all the counties, the MPOs, the TPO, and the TPA in Palm Beach County. Yes.
Any additional questions? All right, all those in favor of getting money from the federal government? Again, we don't have to vote on anything on this, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now go back. Are we going to hear SFRPC revolving loan?
Very briefly.
Very briefly.
It's fantastic. I just move on.
We have no money left.
We have no money, but actually just a quick update on our Brownsfield Cleanup Revolving Loan Fund. That's our environmental cleanup program. The SFRPC is moving forward with a new environmental cleanup initiative of vacant land along the Miami River and 27th Avenue in Miami to transform into much needed workforce and affordable housing.
Great.
It's been a coordinated multi-organizational planning initiative with the help of South Florida's EPA, the FDP, Miami-Dade Durham, Stantec, and the SFRPC. And I'll update the council as the program progresses in June. I just wanted to give that.
Jeff, for the record, tell the record who you are so that we have that.
Jeff Tart, program manager of the revolving.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Any questions? No, thank you, sir. And again, we'll expect a longer report at a normal business meeting next month. And DRI status report. Any? Mr. Gorham?
There's nothing to report except if you would like to know more about the Parkland Pro matters moving forward, the Chapter 163 agreement has been approved in concept and also about the FDOE in Tallahassee. The council having delegated the authority to sign the executive director. Yeah, DOE, was close enough.
Clean cities on the break.
I'm sorry, I thought about that. I was thinking energy. Anyway, it's prepared for execution. It's being signed by the applicant group. There are several different components of that applicant group, then the council, then the department in Tallahassee, and then we'll begin the process of actually evaluating the DRI.
And Mr. Chair, this is simply the agreement laying out the ground rules for the DRI process that no longer exists. It's going to go forward.
Thank you. Council highlights,
Highlights for your reading pleasure.
and you'll hear more about them at our next meeting.
Yeah, no, but you know, every month we try to show up and let you know that yes, we are doing regional planning. And these are examples of it.
Okay. Did you want to say anything about our joint meeting?
Yes, our joint meeting is scheduled to be.
No, the one we had.
Oh, it was fabulous. I thought we were pretty well attended. Joint meeting was great and it was well attended by both sides. It was in Palm Beach. Many of you attended. Thank you for that. And we passed a joint resolution on water funding and how to fund water infrastructure in a way that would model after the Florida Transportation Commission. So it would be, I guess, less Wild West, more regional planning into funding projects. So.
Okay. And is there anything you need to tell us about the military installation resilience review?
Yes, we're very excited to report that the contracts have been fully executed now with Jacobs, the South Florida Defense Alliance. And we are moving forward with a May 24th briefing at the installations. And so we will let the mayors know, also the ones that are interested in this topic. So come by, we expect to have a kickoff meeting again May 24th at Southcom in Doral.
Thank you. Are there any council member inquiries? If not, we are now on Roman numeral 7, announcements and attachments. The attendance form has been attached. You've seen correspondence and articles. Upcoming meetings are listed here. And this is subject to change. We will try and do a meeting and maybe this will be in the fall, but we will try and do one meeting down in Monroe County and another meeting in Dade County.
Thank you.
So.
Yes, we're back to normal.
Right. Yes, Chair Goldberg. Councilmember Goldberg. Goldberg. I'm looking at, right, I'm looking at your name. Right. Sorry, Gary.
For items for discussion,
Yes,
for future board
please.
meetings,
Yes.
something that I'd like to see, and I don't know the right way to word it or the right way to go about it, but is the school boards coming and presenting. I feel like some deserving, some not deserving, but the reputation of our school system prohibits quite a bit of potential economic impact, to our area down here. And, I, for one, my wife is a teacher, teaches at a private school. I am forced, based on where I live, to send my kids to a private school because my public schools are awful. And I know that when we're talking about companies and people moving down here, that is a major question and issue, and specifically on areas that they'll move to or go to. So from a regional impact standpoint, I feel like the school boards could play and should play a major role in it. I'd really like to hear from them.
I'm a little concerned about essentially be summoning the school boards and asking them to justify their action.
I don't know, that's why I said I don't know the right way to word it or to go about it, but it does play a role in our, in our impacts here.
It does.
And it's a tremendous role. So what is I'd like to hear where and how where's the future stand? I mean, what are we doing? I mean, I don't know, like I said, maybe shop it around with staff here to figure out.
We'll try and figure out something on that. Let me, by the way, make an announcement, although I don't know the date of this. One of the things that I chair a working group, which I think I mentioned before, which is all of our meetings are sunshined, that deals with it's educational, trying to get additional students into the trades, the building trades, the marine industry, the aviation industry, coding, things of that nature. Because again, not everyone is destined to attend and graduate college. And we're working on trying to point out that the trade jobs, are what have built this country. If you're a licensed electrician, you're a journeyman, and you've been working on this for, 5 years after you get your journeyman's license. If you're working 50 hours a week, if you're not earning 100 grand a year, you're pretty close to it. A lot of these people go out and start their own small businesses. We've been working in this area, and I will invite if anybody, I thought you did it. Okay, well, if anybody wants to be notified of these meetings, which we have every other month, if you'll give your information, or please let Ms. Cosio know, and we'll make sure you get added to our mailing list. Unfortunately, these meetings are all in Broward because it's a Broward thing, not an SFRPC thing. So, but thank you. And Carrie, we'll roundtable, see what we can come up with. Are there any other discussion items on that?
Not particular.
Okay, is there, let's see, we've already distributed correspondence and article. I mentioned the upcoming meetings. Are there any other announcements before we adjourn and reconvene the executive committee?
Just very briefly, since Councilmember Leonard is no longer on the council, we need to replace the municipal appointment to the Florida Regional Councils Association. So I will bring that, and that has to be from just among our membership. I've spoken with Mayor Ziotti. She's expressed, I wouldn't say with reluctance, but with anticipation.
Move to draft.
That she would be willing to serve on.
One of those that everybody steps back and have to all
Create an official. Mayor Udine is on it.
Okay, great. I was inquiring whether or not Mayor Udine, who's attended a lot of those, is already on, and the answer is yes. So,
Yeah, so we need.
right, okay, great. Okay.
And there was one more thing I wanted to ask. Now it slipped my mind. I'm sure it'll come back to me in a second. So.
Okay, is there anything else before we adjourn? Anything else? If not, show us adjourned at 12:10. Executive council members, do not leave. You're not on the executive
Others are
committee.
legally able to stay.
Right, these are,
Partied up.
you are, she's on the executive committee, right? No, but you're welcome to stay. Anybody, we are now reverting to the executive committee. Former Chair Bailey, you're still on. Commissioner Kaufman, are you still Mayor?
But it's not the same.
Okay.
as Puerto Rico.
It's Sam. Kaufman, are you still on? And Councilman Bailey, are you still on? By the way, anybody else, I see you are both. Anybody else who wants to watch is welcome to.
It's riveting.
Right, we are, okay, we are now,
My goodness.
we are now reverting to the topic that we ran out of time earlier on what we would be doing. For a Broward, Dade, Monroe only SFRPC. We have determined that our joint Treasure Coast South Florida RPC meeting is going to be on solid waste management. So we are now discussing what the SFRPC convening would be. The last we had heard was from Commissioner Furr saying that. No. Okay, I had not had a chance to respond, but Commissioner Furr raising my issue with time.
Right.
Okay, was saying that he thought that issues pertaining to transit, which was one of our potential topics, as well as transit-oriented development and the redevelopment issues pertaining to condos and co-ops were all being covered by different groups like the group you're on, SEPTEC. while solid waste was not being dealt with by any other group.
Yeah.
I was about to respond to that, yes.
And I can see where, because we're a planning organization. So the idea of transit-oriented development definitely falls in our wheelhouse. Transportation falls in our real wheelhouse. So, but we would be, but there is a little bit of redundancy there with
We have a lot of stakeholders
a
interested.
lot of
in that.
stakeholders in that, and ones that are funded that actually kind of determine a lot of what gets done. Let's just put it that way. And a lot of planning. I mean, MPO does planning, Tech doesn't really do much planning. So I guess I just wanted us to make sure that we were.
Adding value. Something.
Yeah. It's really trying to get the best.
Commissioner, for what my view and concern was I'm afraid that if we have, because the meetings are going to be within probably 6 weeks of each other, having 2 meetings on solid waste, 6 weeks apart seems that I think would be highly redundant. While I think that the CEFTEC, how many people are on that?
6.
3? 3 people? Okay.
Chairs of each.
One from.
And the executive director.
Palm Beach, one.
But, all right. So while they may do things, it's only 1 per county. And what I'm thinking as a convening thing, if we are trying to we will invite every elected official in all 3 counties to this. Obviously, we're not going to have all of them, but I'd be surprised. I'm looking for 100, 150 people at this regional convening, the SFRPC. So it would hopefully bring in a lot more people that are available to discuss this. So having said that, and since I think we can agree we don't want to I agree with you that the solid waste is very important. That's why we made that our big regional between both planning councils. I'd like to get back to the 3 that we had suggested differently. And even though Councilmember Goldberg and Mayor Ziotti are not on the executive committee, we'd like your opinion if you'd like to offer it. Are 3 topics that we are discussing for a SFRPC regional convening where we will bring in speakers. We will invite all of the electeds in the 3 counties. We will try and make sure we have at least an hour or an hour and a half for small group discussions before we reconvene. We're looking at 3 topics. 1 would be the issue dealing with having to rebuild condominiums and co-ops because they're older, what effect that would have on affordable housing, what effect that would have on redevelopment, what the local governments need to do in terms of building codes, etc. That's possibility 1. Possibility, I'll change to option. Option 2 is transit-oriented development. Transit-oriented development can deal with affordable housing, can deal with commercial hubs and placemaking, can deal with the issue of last mile access.
Which is one of the things.
Right.
First and last.
So this is one of the issues on TOD. The 3rd topic is more regional transit. We're not talking about, the local bus lines here. We're talking about, for example, there's a lot of information out there and a small amount of it's actually accurate on the Coastal Link. There's discussion on the rail link that Dade is looking at, which my understanding is it's heavy rail from on the, I don't know, what is University? 27th Avenue in Dade County, which becomes University in Broward. But as far as I understand, Dade is just moving ahead and has not spoken with Broward about what we would want there. So, that
It's an issue of subject.
Okay.
of how we tie the three counties together.
Right. And, again, that seems like, if we're going to be having something, we should try and get the counties together. So these are the three options. Summary one was on redevelopment condos, co-ops because of obsolescence. Number two is transit-oriented development. Option three is what I would term rail development. These are the three that we've been discussing, all of which we think are important topics, but we're only going to do one of them. And the idea probably sometime between September and November.
I would hope, I'm going to shoot for September.
Okay, shoot for September. As I said, assume we'll get, between 100 and 150 people there. We'll have some fairly good speakers there. We want to maybe over lunch have breakout where, we'll divide into tables of 10 or 20 to discuss.
November.
Yes, right. And so again, this is what we're talking about. I'd like to hear discussion between those three, and I am fine with any of those three. First, I saw Commissioner Coldiron, then Commissioner Goldberg. And for the record, that one is Coldiron and that one is Goldberg. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Geller. Yes, I'm the cold one over here, and that's the gold over there.
I've been called worse.
I would just say selfishly from Monroe County, the issue that we really are struggling with is that last mile of how do we get people from buses to their businesses, and how do we get more traffic off of US 1 highway. So as I was stating earlier, the Monroe is not involved in the South Florida Regional Transportation Authority, and we're grappling right now with whether we want to join, because we have now at the point we've done our studies, we know what our problems are. We've heard each of our municipalities and the county weigh in with our priorities on what we all feel we need to do. But what we need to do is the next step, which is to have the professionals come in, God bless you, and let us know what are some of the solutions. And what we all were immediately saying were these issues of the ped bikes, the shared scooters, the shared rides. And so if you want Monroe County to participate in this, and you're thinking your goal is over 100 people, I think for all of these topics, this one specifically would draw people from the Florida Keys. And so I would ask that you all consider us using that last mile access and the transit-oriented development as the next topic that we discuss for South Florida Regional Planning Council. And with that, I yield my time and thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask everyone here to quickly comment on that, the council members. So let me ask Commissioner, former Chair Bailey, do you have any, between those three I mentioned, do you have any thoughts?
I'll leave it to the electeds, because I feel you guys know better than I, and so I will just defer to the electeds in the room.
Thank you. I'm going to go around the room in this order. I forgot to call on Councilmember Goldberg. I'll call on Councilmember Goldberg, Mayor Ziotti, Commissioner Kaufman, and then I see Sue Heim is still on. Is that correct?
Sue Heim, Commissioner.
Okay, and I'll call on Commissioner Heim last. So Councilmember Goldberg, you're recognized, sir.
So, Mr. Chair,
Between those three.
all three of those sound great. I strongly agree with Commissioner Coldiron. TOD is something that I've been focused on for probably the last 15 years, maybe, or longer here in Broward County. And it just isn't getting done right at all. It hasn't been done right. It's not getting done right. And what we do is we get around the table, we sit and we talk, and it seems like we have ideas of how to do it right, but we have no means of enacting it, because it has to be a public-private partnership. It has to be. It's the only way that it will work and function to get everybody on the same page.
So is your recommendation the TOD? Okay.
Absolutely.
By the way, I will tell you that the ordinance that I passed, that I told you about, that is a TOD, was just adopted in Pompano Beach. And I've spoken to the Hollywood, Lauderdale Lakes, and Plantation councils, and I expect all three of them to adopt a TOD ordinance. So feel free to call me on that. Mayor Ziotti, between the three,
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
you agree on TOD? Okay. Commissioner Kaufman?
Yeah, I agree also.
Okay. Commissioner Heim? Okay.
Wastewater.
Well, not speaking. Okay. All right. Unless I am mistaken, which I frequently am, it sounds like there is consensus to do TOD, and as part of that, of course, is the last mile access. Is this correct? Is there any dispute that? All right. So we don't need a vote on this, but it is my understanding that there is consensus, unanimous consensus for us to do the next regional convening, SFRPC only, on TOD inclusive of last mile access. And we've already decided that the joint SFRPC Treasure Coast RPC will be on solid waste. I think that these are both good examples of what we want to be seeing and doing, where the SFRPC is serving as a convening authority on regional issues that extend beyond one county. And I've been pushing for this for a long time, but I think we're actually doing it now. I think we would have done it a year or two ago, except for that, what was it called again? COVID, yeah, that's it, right. Okay. Is there anything else that needs to come in front of the executive committee before we adjourn?
Just one thing, I remembered what I wanted to say. So I am going to reach out to the board members because I need volunteer subject matter experts like Councilmember Furr, Councilmember Ross, members from Miami-Dade Broward and Monroe on the waste issue. I want to get like a little council member planning committee to help out. And the same thing, Councilmember Goldberg with a TOD.
I'm a TOD guy. I nominate.
So I'm going to send some.
I nominate.
And then we can really
right.
start moving along.
I nominate Commissioner Furr as our king of garbage, along with my mayor, Mayor Ross. Yeah, he's a trash talker.
Thank you all so much.
And by the way, Commissioner Furr, I took over the weekend, I took Vice Mayor Fisher shooting. So you are still, you're almost the only one. I haven't reached out.
Are they afraid to go? They're afraid they won't come back?
17 out of 20. Okay. So,
How do I get on the?
I don't want to pull a chain.
I want to go.
so you have to let me know when you're ready. I'll follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
If I can, the consensus you just reached among your colleagues, the unanimous consensus.
Yes.
The tea leaves having spoken for themselves. It is a decision of the executive committee, which will be formally submitted to the SFRPC, absent any objection from them.
I don't think we need to actually vote on what topic we're
All
going
I'm
to take up
suggesting is
to.
deliberate as a matter of information to the full
Yeah.
board.
We'll provide it.
Yes.
That's the only reason for doing so.
Okay.
You have independent authority as the executive committee. That's what you've exercised today.
Actually, I think she can do on her own, just pick topics. So we have given guidance as to what we want it to
The
be.
record will so
Right.
reflect.
I am all for
Okay, right. All right. Is there anything else? If not,
That's a big thing.
I hereby declare us adjourned. Commissioner Furr, if you will hang on for 30 seconds. Hold me on the.
Isabel, would
Hold
you
me on
make
the
up a
microphone. So I've got.
You should. You want to use the private office? You're good here. I'm good.